Hey, welcome to Ask Elihu. And today we're going to take a look at Game 3 of playoffs in the NBA when a team is down 0-2. Now, we saw something really weird that I'd never actually paid much attention to June 12th between the Clippers and the Jazz. The Clippers were down 2-0 at home. They were 5-point favorites, but they were a 4-point favorite for the first half. Anyone who bets a lot of NBA knows that, typically a 5-point favorite is going to be about a 2.5 or 3-point favorite. And in fact, the Clippers were a 5-point favorite and 2.5 for the first half in the second game. So I'm going to pull up these odds from Pinnacle for these two games. And you see in this top one here, it's a 5-point favorite, 4-point first half favorite. Similar situation, only 2.5-point favorites. So what gives? Why are the Clippers so much better in the first half of Game 3 than Game 4 or pretty much any other game that you'd expect? Raz gave me data for the first 3 games of each playoff series where this happened, where it's down 2-0 from 2007 all the way to including some of the games from 2021. But you'll see I exclude data from 2020 because the bubble effect, the home field advantage was not normal. I mean, typically your home field advantage in NBA is 4.5 points. You're going to win regular season games about 60% of the time. Playoff teams win their home field games about 65% of the time, but I don't think the playoffs has any stronger home field advantage. What you see is that the better teams are playing more games at home, and that's just a selection bias. But let's look at some of the summaries. In the first game, you're typically a 7-point favorite. The better team playing at home the first 2 games versus a 2-point, for games 3 and 4, 2-point favorite. Now, the really weird thing about game 3, at least with the data, your typical result for the spread is 2. Your typical, your game and spread are roughly the same historically. But your first half result, the team typically wins by a couple points more than, the spread suggests. Now you can look at this happens both with the means and the medians. So when you see that weird situation where the spread is out of whack, you're dealing with a sample size of about 124 games. So your standard deviations plus or minus 5.5, and the team barely game 3 teams barely win at home a little more than half the time, but they're winning that first half about 2/3 of the time. So if that's, if you'd expect those to be pretty close, that's, about 3.5 deviations above what you'd expect. Now, that doesn't mean you can bet it blindly. Can you explain why teams are doing so well in the first half of Game 3 at home? And maybe they are trying hard. Maybe they know that, if you're down 0-3, you have no prayer and you may as well go home. So they're going to bring it all out right at the beginning of the game, even if they subsequently get blown out in the second half. But yeah, the data supports in a situation like that, when if you see that weird number, Clippers -4 for the first half, that might be a good bet. So if you have any other questions, send me a note or a Slack.